So it starts off as, yes, your brand is just kind of the podcast, but it carries over to your social media, and then it carries over to everything that you do. And if you think about it, it carries over to how you title episodes. It carries over to the guests you have on. It carries over to everything. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode. It was episode number 31, the 3 questions I get asked the most often. Today, for episode number 32, what's your podcast brand? So, one of the things I ask people when I am doing a call with them or when we're working together, I always say, what's your brand? And some people say, I don't really know what you mean. And I'll say, okay, so have you ever been to an Apple store? And they'll say, yeah. Do you feel like, based on what you understand about Apple, that the Apple store is on brand? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, okay, why? And we'll have a conversation around, well, Apple's brand, right? Like their reputation is modern. That's what represents them. Modern, simple, very, I don't want to say bland, but when you look at one of their products, it's very flat. There's not a lot to it. It's simple. It's very simple. I don't have my AirPods next to me, but the case is very simple. It's not very fancy looking. It's very sleek. So when you go into an Apple store, it's very, very plain. And there's not a lot of different colors. There's a lot of shiny stuff. It's very modern. It's very sleek. That store is on brand with what they are trying to accomplish. So I always say our goal is to figure out how to create that for you. So if you were to think of Nike. Nike's another very popular brand around the world. If Nike had a restaurant, what would that restaurant be like? It would most likely have sports stars on the wall, and it might have a gym in there for all you know, where you can imagine what it would look like. It would be very high tech. It would probably be pretty colorful, right? You can imagine what would be on the walls. You can imagine what kind of furniture they would use because you understand their brand. So just like with anything else, your podcast is a brand. So a couple questions I like to go back to for this when you're figuring out your podcast brand. Again, this is the through line of everything you do. What problem are we solving? Who are we solving it for? In what unique way? So the problem we're solving is going to help us figure out the brand. The for who is definitely going to help us figure out the brand. And then in what unique way, that's going to help you choose some buzzwords and figure out stuff like that. So when I'm thinking about a brand, I'm going to probably say that word 500 times in this episode, so I'll try not to. I like to ask people, what do you want people to say about you when you're not around? What do you want your reputation to be? And then I have an exercise where I sit down and I say, all right, let's come up with your 5 brand words. So a brand word is just a representation of what you want people to think about your podcast, right? In the beginning, it's just going to be a podcast. But you can connect it to, well, when people see my social media, I want them to think the same thing. When people join my Facebook group, I want them to think the same thing. When they sign up to the mailing list, same thing. So it starts off as, yes, your brand is just kind of the podcast, but it carries over to your social media, and then it carries over to everything that you do. And if you think about it, it carries over to how you title episodes. It carries over to the guests you have on. It carries over to everything. The words you use, the words you don't. The topics you choose, the topics you don't. So this will be a good exercise for you for a takeaway. What are your brand words? So if you were to sit down and you were going to write out a list of 5 words that you want to represent your brand, you want it to be what people talk about when you're not around. You want it to be the words that they would choose to represent you. If you said, hey, what words best represent me? What would you choose? So think about that. Modern is one. Reliable is one. Inclusive is one. Controversial could be one. There's a lot of controversial brands out there, but they stay in that lane, and that's part of who they are. Now, the reason this is so important, not necessarily in the beginning, right? Because in the beginning, you're just kind of figuring out who you are and who you're speaking to. But as you get further into podcasting, it really allows you to create some sort of checklist of, is this person that I'm debating having on the show on brand or not? Is this post that I'm going to put up on social media on brand or not? And that kind of becomes the silo that you stay in. And one of the reasons that some of the podcasts that I've seen become very successful, one of the reasons they become very successful is because they are branded really, really, really well. I have worked with many shows, and the shows that do well are usually the ones that are the best branded. So I think I've said on this podcast before, I had a client who had a show about being a stay-at-home mom. It's very easy to brand that. She brands it as, I'm a relatable mom because I'm staying at home with my children. So if that's your experience, I'm relatable for you. That was her brand, relatable mom, somebody who is trying to figure it out, somebody who is not perfect but makes mistakes all the time. That was her brand, even to the point where if one of her children walked in during one of her episodes, she wouldn't necessarily edit it out because that's part of her brand. Where somebody else, it might be the opposite. So I really want you to think from that frame of, okay, what do I want people to say about me? What do I want people to say about my podcast? And then how does that carry over to everything else? How does that carry over to social media? So for me, again, you see a different side of me on this show because I'm just talking about podcasting, where the other brand is I'm just a relatable guy who has focused on getting better every single day for the last 6 years. I love my cats. I love martial arts. I love watching UFC on a Saturday. I love just the human experience. I'm very low maintenance and I'm just very simple. So if I post a picture of my cat, that's part of the brand. If I post me going to a UFC event, that's part of the brand. If I post me at the gym, that's part of the brand. So I think it also helps you figure out not only the topics, but what should I be posting? What should I be posting? What should I be posting in my Facebook group? So,
hi, my name's John Laurito, and I just wanted to give a big shout out to Kevin Palmieri. I had reached out to him. He had been referred to me when I had shared with a friend of mine some interest in doing a podcast, and he said, you've got to use Kevin. He's fantastic. He's the best around. He'll get you started and off the ground and soaring high in no time. And take it from somebody who knows nothing about podcasting other than maybe saying a few things. But as far as behind the scenes, the startup, everything, I knew nothing. Kevin was phenomenal in terms of leading me through the whole process, and not just easy to work with, but really, really knows his stuff. A great combination between leading me through all the stuff I had no idea what I was doing, but also really listening to me and understanding what it was I was trying to accomplish and what my vision is. So whether you're looking for somebody to help you and get you started, or somebody, as I've done, where I'm putting it entirely in his hands because I've got total trust and confidence in him, and he is a true pro and easy to work with, any of those ends of the spectrum, you're going to have a lot of success and a lot of fun working with Kevin. Trust me. Thanks.
I think a lot of people, they just don't spend that much time on this. They have an idea of this is the name of my show, but the name doesn't always represent the brand. The name of the show is great, but it doesn't necessarily suggest the way people are going to talk about it, right? You can have a show called anything, but it doesn't mean it's modern. It doesn't mean it's reliable. It doesn't mean it's trustworthy. It doesn't mean it's warm. It doesn't mean it's inclusive. It doesn't mean it's exclusive. What do you want your brand to be? For a long time, or I don't know how long because I'm not really tapped into this, but there was a brand called Supreme. That was an exclusive. One of their things was exclusivity. You cannot get a hold of this. You have to pay $5,000 for whatever it was. That was exclusivity. There's other things, Planet Fitness, their brand is inclusivity. No matter what, no judgment, you should come to our gym. That's part of their brand. That's what they want you to feel when you go there. That's how they advertise it. That's how they market it. That's how they talk about it. That's how they want other people to talk about it. So I know I'm going off on a lot of different brands, but I want you to have an idea of how other people are branding themselves so you can brand yourself that way. Now, in fairness, I have not done a great job of branding myself as the host of Podcast Growth U, especially on social media. Here I do it, but on social media I haven't done it yet because I already have another brand and I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate both of those. So that's not necessarily a great representation. But when you finish this episode in a couple of minutes here, I want you to sit down and I want you to write out 5 brand words. And if you struggle finding a list, just Google brand words. And I'm sure a giant list will come up, and you can choose 5 that resonate with you. You can choose 5 that resonate with your audience. And that's another way for you to start understanding your audience at a deeper level, is you're going to understand, okay, these are the other brands that they're into, right? If you were to say, my ideal listener is somebody who likes Apple and they like Google and they like YouTube, whatever, does your company, does your podcast, does your social media, does that fall within that range? Does it fall into that bucket? If so, then maybe you're branding yourself the right way. If not, maybe you're not. So it's an important exercise. The other, and the last thing I'll say, this will be a quick one, but the last thing I'll say is your brand can shift. It doesn't have to be what it is today forever. It can stay the same, but you can shift your brand as you grow and as you evolve. Think of it this way. So our show is Next Level University. We started off as the Hyper Conscious Podcast. Yes, that's the name, but the brand was also, we're going to have deep conversations about deep things with deep individuals. Now it's very different, where we're talking about life, love, health, and wealth. The guests we would have on were different. The titles are different. So as we changed our name, we also started to change our brand. So that's up there too. So just check in with this, because again, it's not always how to get great guests or how to title your episodes in the most effective way. Sometimes you got to go back to the beginning and say, okay, when I started this, did I actually start this in the right way? That's another interesting thing about a podcast, is sometimes the things that you did in the very beginning and never changed are probably the things holding you back. But on the other end of that, sometimes the things that you did in the beginning and didn't change are also the things that are helping you create momentum. So it's very important to go back with a new, higher level of awareness and say, okay, knowing what I know now, what would I have done different? Well, now I have the opportunity to do that. And you can always rebrand like we did 500 episodes in. So go Google a list of brand words, figure out what you want your brand to represent, and then kind of go from there. See, okay, are my titles in alignment with that? Is the name of my show in alignment with that? Is everything, is the Facebook group, my post, are everything I'm doing, or is everything I'm doing in alignment with what I want to create, the emotion I want to create in the end user? That is a wonderful question for you to ask. All right, Podcast Growth Nation. Next week is going to be a controversial episode. So I was on the phone recently, or on Zoom recently, with somebody who did a podcast breakthrough session with me. And I said, look, I hate to be this guy. I don't want to be the bad guy, but you need to change your name. You need to change the name of your podcast, and you need to change the artwork. So we're going to talk about that next week, because there might be a lot of you out there that, again, when you started from a place of, well, let's just see what happens. And maybe you're 50 episodes in now and you have the same name and nobody knows what it means. If that's the case, it might be time for you to change it. So we will talk about that in the next episode. As always, if you are interested in a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session, please reach out. You can send me a DM on Instagram. You can email me. Everything is in the show notes. Not going to sell you anything. I just want to add value. And I want to get to know you and see what your struggles are and how I can better serve on the podcast as well. And if you know a podcaster who would find value in these episodes, please share it with them. I would appreciate that very much. We want a strong, awesome community. And I've been getting a lot of really good feedback from a lot of the podcasts that I've been going on. After they have me on, or before, when they're researching me, they find this show and they listen. So I appreciate all of you as well. I'm going to keep on keeping on. You keep on keeping on. And if you ever have any questions, please reach out. I am always here for you. Until next week, you are all the best. Keep on podcasting. Keep on crushing it. And I will talk to you then.
Next Level University and Kevin is exactly where you need to be if you're a podcaster. When I first started out just a few months ago, I had no clue on the direction I was going. I was getting hustled by another company that was giving me not even close to the value that Kevin and Next Level U was giving me. They literally changed the trajectory of my podcast, have helped me out tremendously. They understand the clients. I promise you, you will not go wrong with dealing with Kevin and Next Level U. I'll see you there.
Hi there. This is Dr. Taryn McCarthy, and I am the host of the Business of Happiness podcast, which would not be in existence were it not for the one and only incredible Kevin Palmieri. Seriously, I am so indebted to Kevin for the service that he provides. Every week he meets with me. He has been coaching me on how to initiate and launch this podcast. He helped me put it together with his great expertise, and every week his whole team works tirelessly to get these podcasts uploaded to Buzzsprout and to deliver my content to my audience. I am so grateful. I couldn't say enough about him. In fact, we've been working together so well. I've seen so much wonderful input from my listeners and asking me for more that in just a few weeks we're going to be doubling the number of podcasts we produce per week. So this trajectory is just flying, and I'm really enjoying the whole process. So I couldn't say enough about him. Please, if this is something you're considering, I highly recommend him, and reach out to me anytime if you have any questions about our experience. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Hey, I wanted to give my experience working with Kevin and the rest of the Next Level University